Good morning, everyone. This is Jewish Talk on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHBC, streaming live on the college station. You can catch us at tunein.com. I am Rabbi Pearl, and today we are going to be discussing the significant days that we find ourselves in between last Thursday and this coming Tuesday. This past Thursday is the date in 1941 when the Lubavitcher Rebbe came to the United States. And this Tuesday marks the 23rd anniversary of the passing of the Rebbe, also known as Gimel Tammuz. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson of righteous memory, was the seventh leader in the Chabad Lubavitch dynasty and is considered to have been the most phenomenal Jewish personality of modern times. You see, to hundreds of thousands of followers and millions of sympathizers and admirers around the world, he was, and still is, despite his passing, the Rebbe. Undoubtedly, the one individual, more than any other, singularly responsible for stirring the conscious and the spiritual awakening of world Jewry. So stay with us as we go through the Rebbe's life, some of the teachings and some of the fascinating stories of the Rebbe's life. The Rebbe was born in 1902 on the 11th day of Nisan in Nikolaev, that's in Russia. He was the son of the renowned Kabbalist, Talmudical scholar, and leader Rabbi Levi Yitzchak and his mother, Rebbetzin Chana Schneerson. His mother, Rebbetzin Chana, who passed away in 1964, was known for her erudition, her kindness, and her extraordinary accessibility. Her courage and ingenuity became legend because when her husband was exiled by the Soviets to a remote village in Asian Russia, she labored to make inks from herbs that she gathered in the fields so that her husband, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, would continue to write his commentary on Kabbalah and Torah subjects. The Rebbe himself was named after his ancestor, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, with whom he later shared many characteristics. Let me first begin. There's a story about the Rebbe's early life that seems to be almost symbolic of everything that was to follow. When the Rebbe was 9 years old, the young Menachem Mendel courageously dove into the Black Sea and saved the life of a little boy who had rowed out to sea and lost control of his small craft. That sense of other lives in danger seems to have dominated the Rebbe's conscience of Jews drowning in assimilation, ignorance, alienation, and no one hearing their cries for help, whether it's Jews on campus, in isolated communities, under repressive regimes. From early childhood, the Rebbe displayed an amazing, prodigious mental acuity. By the time he reached his bar mitzvah, the Rebbe was considered an Ilui, which is the Hebrew word for a Torah prodigy, and he spent his teen years immersed in the study of Torah. Little fast forward, his marriage took place in Warsaw. This was in 1929. The Rebbe married the sixth Rebbe's daughter, the previous Rebbe, Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka. His wife, the Rebbe's wife, was born in 1901. She was chosen by her father, the sixth Rebbe, to accompany him on his forced exile to Kastarama in 1927. The Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, was the Rebbe's life partner for 60 years, and she passed away on Chof Bei Shvat, the 22nd day of Shvat, in 1988. Now, the Rebbe, after his marriage, studied in the University of Berlin, then in Sorbonne in Paris, and it may have been in these years that his formidable knowledge of mathematics and sciences began to blossom. And so, as I said in the beginning of the program, we find ourselves in unique days, the days in between the date that marks the arrival of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin in the United States in 1941, June 23rd, to be exact. The Rebbe and his Rebbetzin miraculously were rescued by the grace of the Almighty God from the European Holocaust. The Rebbe's arrival marked the launching of amazingly new efforts in bolstering and disseminating Torah and Judaism in general, and Hasidic teachings in particular. This came through the establishment of 3 central Lubavitch organizations under the Rebbe's leadership. The first is Merkas Linyonei Chinuch, the Central Organization for Jewish Education, Kahos Publishing Society, and Machne Yisrael, which is the social service agency of Chabad. The Rebbe and the Rebbetzin arrived on the 28th day of Sivan, which would be this past Thursday, at 10:30 a.m. in Staten Island after an 11-day trip on a boat called Serpo Pinto, a boat that was registered in Portugal, and they miraculously escaped there. Portugal at that time in 1941 was on the cusp of it being going more towards the Nazis. At that time was somewhat neutral, and many thousands of refugees, Jewish refugees, were able to make it out on this boat during that particular time. But coming to the United States marked a beginning for the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. During this time, his father-in-law, that means from the time 1941 onwards until 1950, the Rebbe's father-in-law, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, urged him to publish his notations on Hasidic and Kabbalistic works, as well as a wide range of response on Torah subjects. With these publications, his genius was soon recognized by scholars throughout the world. In 1950, after the passing of his father-in-law's name was Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, the Rebbe reluctantly ascended the leadership of the Chabad movement, whose headquarters to this very day is at 770 Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn, New York. Soon, Lubavitch institutions and activities took on new dimensions. The outreaching philosophy of Chabad was translated into even greater action as Lubavitcher centers, Chabad houses, were open in dozens of cities and university campuses around the world. Fast forward, March 2nd, 1992, on Monday afternoon. While praying at the graveside of his father-in-law and predecessor, the Rebbe suffered a stroke that paralyzed his right side, and most, devastatingly, robbed him of his ability to speak. 2 years and 3 months later, the Rebbe passed away in the early morning hours of the 3rd of the Hebrew month of Tammuz, in the year 5754, June 12th, 1994. With the Rebbe's teachings propelling them and his example serving as a beacon to emulate, all of us know Lubavitch has rapidly grown to be a worldwide presence, and all of its various activities are stamped with the Rebbe's vision. Small wonder, then, that many ask, what is it about leadership that was, and in so many ways still is, so unique? What was so unique about the Rebbe's leadership that should be continuing in such a magnanimous way? Why do leading personalities of the day maintain such profound respect and admiration for the Rebbe continuously? See, let me share with you. There are so many kinds of leaders. Many leaders recognize the need of the moment, and they respond with courage and direction. That's their forte, a very admirable one, a leader who's able to recognize the need of the moment. Others, though their strength may not lie in instant response to current problems, are blessed with the ability of perceiving foresight, knowing what tomorrow will bring and how best to prepare for it. Then you have a third. Still other leaders excel in yet a third distinct area, Possessing a keen sense of history and tradition, their advice and leadership is molded by a great sensitivity to the past. But one who possesses all three qualities was truly unique, standing alone in leadership. Such was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the inspiration and driving force behind the success of Lubavitch today. Being able to, in a sense, connect the past, the present, and the future. Radiating a keen sense of urgency, he demanded much of his followers and even more from himself. The Rebbe led, above else, by his own personal example. The Rebbe was a rare blend of prophetic visionary and a very pragmatic leader, being able to synthesize deep insight into the present needs of the Jewish people with a breadth of vision for its future. In a sense, he charted the course of Jewish history, initiating, in addition to reacting to, current events. The Rebbe was guided by inspired insight and foresight in combining his encyclopedic scholarship, and all of his pronouncements and undertakings were first and foremost rooted in our Holy Torah. Time and again, what was clear to him at the outset became obvious to other leaders with hindsight decades later in many, many areas. From the moment the Rebbe arrived in America in 1941, 76 years ago, his brilliance at addressing himself to the following ideal became apparent. And I share this with you. Listen carefully. He would not acknowledge division or separation. Let me repeat that. The Rebbe would not acknowledge division or separation. Every one of us, indeed every human being, has a unique role to play in the greater scheme of things, and each and every one of us, whoever we may be, are an integral part of the tapestry of God's creation. So for nearly 5 of the most critical decades in recent history, the Rebbe's goal to reach out to every corner of the world with love and concern had unfolded dramatically. No sect of community was left out. Young and old, men and women, leaders and laymen, scholars and laborer, student and teacher, children, even infants. The Rebbe had the uncanny ability to meet everyone at their own level. He advised heads of state on matters of national and international importance, explored with professionals the complexity in their own fields of expertise, and spoke to small children with warm words and a fatherly smile. It was only yesterday at our Farbrengen in Shul, I shared a story. One time the Rebbe came out of his office, walked down outside of 770 to go home, and a little child sees a man coming out and with a long kapata, the long Shabbos coat, and he actually thought it was his father. So he ran over to him. It was a very hot day, and he went over to the Rebbe, and like a child, he took the Rebbe's coat, the kapata, and he wiped his face. Now, the mother of this child was watching from the distance, was flabbergasted. Can you imagine? Her child had just wiped his face on the Rebbe's coat. So after Shabbos, she wrote in and apologized for her child. Obviously the child didn't know. The child thought this was his father. And the Rebbe wrote back to say, this gave me tremendous nachas, tremendous joy. He said, but that's the youth, that's the simplicity, the holiness, and the pureness of a child. And the Rebbe could be speaking to the biggest leaders of the world, still had warm words and fatherly smile and caring for children, and created a whole organization called Tzivos Hashem.